So has everybody met Liz?
Hi, Liz.
This way,
No.
video meetings, yeah, Zoom meetings.
So what we'll do is, I think everybody who's going to be here, I don't know about Adele, but she can hop on when she gets a chance. Her husband has taken a turn for the worse with his medical condition. And so I've imposed on her to stay on the committee, but she's been very reluctantly clear that she doesn't have a lot to give right now. But I value her wisdom. I know we do. So at this point, she's going to stay with us. So well, let's get the meeting started, and Deanna will happily agree to do our opening chalice reading.
I have a chalice, but I'm not sure I can light it here. Okay, well, I'll come back to that.
I brought one, so I'll try to make mine work in the meantime.
Okay. I think my lighter thing just ran out of fuel. So I'll read. May our hearts be pure, harmonious, and peaceful. May our great truth flourish and our worldly work be prosperous and not offended by evil. May all auspicious blessings be conferred. May the benefits of yin and yang abundantly aid our being, and may we always be sheltered by heaven.
Maybe so. Well, hello, everyone. I thought we would start with just checking in. It's been, gosh, has it been 2 months since we've seen each other? So let's just, there's no special check-in question. Simply, I think we want to know how everybody's doing, maybe something you've been struggling with or something that you've been very excited about. Who would like to, I'd like to have Liz start and share with us any check-in that she would like to share with us.
Well, I'm just, it's good to see you all, and I do look forward to seeing you in person. Just want to say that when I am not muted, you may hear a hum. That's my computer that I can't change right now. So just that. And, you know, Anne Marie and I have been going back and forth on emails, and I met the board this week, and it was all very exciting. And then all of a sudden, Anne Marie sends me an email yesterday about Abby. And I have been following the newsletter and other sources of information. So I'm happy for her and all of you. And it seems to be an auspicious time to be joining you in certain ways. So I'm looking forward to working with you, and we'll get started together. That's really it, Anne Marie.
Thanks, Liz. Who else would like to share a high or low with the group?
I'll go. Last Monday was my son Donovan, his first day back to in-person school, which I think everybody was excited for. There's some anxiety going back. It was also Christina's first day back to school in almost a year. So exciting times. It's nice to have a little bit of a routine back again.
Great, thank you. Margaret, I've been thinking about you because I feel like you are such a linchpin to our, you know, our virtual congregational life right now. And while that is a blessing for us because of your extraordinary organizational skills, I pray for you that it doesn't overwhelm, because I think the expectations are high and relentless. So just know that that's recognized by people.
Thank you. I decided to go to business school when back in 2007, because I felt like I was not getting anywhere professionally. And I was about 2/3 of the way through when the market crashed and I was to lose my job. But it also was the moment when I realized that being an administrator, an administrative person was actually my superpower, and it changed the way I do things and how I approach things. So, so while I appreciate the words, it's actually this is what I do best. So, yay! I finally got set down right, like the Quaker hymn puts it. So, thank you.
I'll mention something. Some good news is that the First CU Quilters have a virtual exhibition right now as part of the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival, which we usually attend in person in Hampton at the end of February every year. But this year they're not having an event, so we were asked to provide our quilts in a slideshow that we could show online. And so if anybody wants the link to it, I'll be happy to email you after the meeting.
Yes, please.
It's pretty fun because you can also look at quilts from all over other places too. But the Quilters is really a solid group. We met last night on Zoom, and it's most of the quilts we make, we give away. This group of quilts is in response to a challenge called the 9 Patch. And it's just, it's a great group.
Do you have any, quilts? Do you have any quilts in the show?
Yeah, I have one in.
Okay. Thank you. Dorothy, why don't you?
Well, okay, so I didn't get to go Thursday night to see Abby off, but Charles and Lucy did, and they shared how joyous it was. Matter of fact, I was like overcome and teared up just reading the email. I was so excited. And I know we'd all been hoping for this for Abby for a long time. So I guess that's like the highlight of my whole month. But you know, we're all healthy, relatively happy, stir crazy. So this definitely was the best news we've had in a long time.
Good.
So.
Tom?
We are spending most of our time down at the river at the family farm with the COVID era. We've been doing that and continue to, although we're very excited, like a lot of other folks. I think you mentioned earlier, Helen and I have now both gotten our first shot. Helen got hers yesterday in Portsmouth, and I got mine the day before in Richmond at the Arthur Ashe Center. And so we're looking to scheduling. Unfortunately, in those same locations, 3 weeks hence, we had on the same day, had to have our vaccinations in the different places. So we will not be able to go together unless we get something rescheduled. It doesn't seem likely. So we will deal with that. But things have been very wet down here. It's been amazingly wet down at the farm. Our yard has been a pond. So we've been dealing with that, but it's okay. It's nice. We've got lots of wildlife, and the ducks and things are here, and the eagles, and lots of deer, and whatever miscellaneous critters. So it's fun. It's fun.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Joe, how's the family?
Good. We this past week we started sending our oldest daughter to the same preschool that we're sending our youngest daughter to for a couple months now, and which is good. There's like a classroom of elementary school kids that goes to this preschool that does virtual school, through their laptops at preschool, and so she was really excited, and I think Kristen and I were both relieved to have both of the kids out of the house for the first time in this pandemic. So that was really nice. My other news is tomorrow I turn 40 years old. So
Woohoo! Woohoo! Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Really, happy birthday.
Decade birthday. Good for you. Not that you had anything to do with it. It just happens, but still.
Right. Still here.
Gary.
Gosh, Joe, 40 years old. Life is over at that point. Not much left. So it's all downhill. It's all downhill from that point. No, Nothing much new with us. We did get our second shots yesterday, as I mentioned, and really happy about that. My arm is quite sore. Otherwise, I'm a little blah, but feeling pretty good. So great news when you get that. Even the first one, but the second one is really good.
For my part, I guess my high, of course, is the fabulous news that Abby and her family are free, as she says. It is an auspicious time because I've actually been spending quite a bit of time helping with her children, who I've fallen in love with. I'm going to go through a little bit of withdrawal, I'm afraid, but that's a good thing. And but the timing couldn't be better because I once I'm fully vaccinated, I'll be able to go out and help my son and his wife with the birth of their new baby in April. And as I was worried how I was going to juggle, the obligations with Abby with that not obligation, but joy. And then also turn my attention fully to the capital campaign. So I actually look at this timing as, yeah, it's great for Abby, but really good for Anne Marie too. So, hey. So thanks, everybody. Good to know you're still hanging in there. Let's turn now to our next item of business, which is me and Kevin briefly telling you about our meeting with the board of directors on Tuesday. Kevin, would you like to do a quick report?
Yes, so we met with the board on Tuesday and we can recap where we're at. We talked about the solar and roof task force that has been formed that Joe is a member of. We spoke about where we were at with wanting to partner with Liz and introduce Liz, and the board was able to ask some questions. We had some good questions come from the board around, how does the board think about budgeting as we go into a capital campaign? How do we think about success for capital campaigns in a time of pandemic? And Liz was fantastic and gave a lot of really good, thorough answers to that. And that was pretty much what we did.
Yeah, and after we left the meeting, they approved Liz's contract. So that
Yes.
you know that, Devin, but you weren't there, but I found that out. So that's super good news. The other thing is, I forget what I've told you or not, but we have asked the board to find us 2 to 3 more members for the steering committee. Given some people change in health status or their spouse's health status and basically losing Margaret as a member of the committee, unless she moved to staff, and then Harvey dropped out right away. It's a pretty bare bones, number of people here. So we have asked them to find us 2 to 3 additional people to join the steering committee. And just think, those lucky people, they got to skip the entire buildup in the last year and a half, and they can join us when we're off and humming, huh? So anyway, hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later. So that's pretty much what happened at the board meeting. Any questions? So let's move then to Gary, who's going to give us, for all of our meetings, he's going to provide us with an update on the financial situation. And Margaret, you said he could screen share with you.
What I can do is let Gary share. I'll make him a co-host, and that'll allow him to screen share because I don't have the document. He's.
Are you prepared to do that, Gary?
I'm going to try.
Give me a second.
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
I know. Give me a second. Give me a second. Actually, Anne-Marie, while I'm doing this,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn hosting over to you so I can just leave when I need to.
Okay.
So going forward, you're going to have to make people co-hosts or whatever if they need to screen share. All right. I'm now powerless.
We love that, yeah. So now let's see if Gary can be powerful.
Okay.
We got to get this right eventually, so we might as well make it work this time. Aha.
Can people see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I think these are good numbers from Amanda, and she worked with Sally Wetzler on the earlier stuff, and she initially had given me some fiscal year numbers. I said, we really need it from the beginning of time. So that's what we've got here. The first donation, as you see, was, according to this, is July of 2018. I've taken the names out, by the way. And we've had some hefty donations, and they total 128,882. And then the expenses are down here. A couple of big ones: prepayment of that renovation loan of 20,000, and then the refinancing closing cost 17,000. They total 38,018, with a net, with balance on hand at this time of 90,863.83. So we're off to a decent start, I think, before we even really do much of anything.
Thank you, Gary. Questions for Gary?
How many donations was that, Gary, number? I saw the dollar amount, that
How many?
it was about a dozen, is it?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Okay, thank you.
How do people like this as the format for Gary going forward for our purposes?
I might go offline with Gary just to talk about a couple of other column issues, but I can work with him directly about that. Okay, Gary?
Sure.
And my other question is your sense, especially for those who gave significantly the $27,000 gift, that these folks are prepared to give again when the campaign really takes off this year?
Some yes and some no is what I would guess. Some
Yeah,
yes.
I wondered if any were bequests that we wouldn't see again.
Gary, having seen the names, do you think, are any of them bequests?
You're muted, Gary.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. I don't have that in front of me right now, but I think there was one gift that might have been a bequest. The others, I don't think so, at least not to my knowledge.
Gary, I think you and Amanda also have a column on here for gift acknowledged, or you're going to have one on there.
We need to do that, right? And I don't know who's going to be doing that. And then, of course, I'll send that on to that person with the names and everything so they can know.
Adele McGowan has offered to do that. It's something she can do easily without, too much trouble. So Adele will be happy to do that.
Okay.
Does it make sense to people to have, we haven't really talked about the confidentiality issues so far. Does it make sense to people to see these without names attached? Liz, what's standard practice for our kind of group at this stage?
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I would say that for purposes of a review of macro numbers such as this, for these steering committee meetings, the way this is set up without names is fine. When we get into the financial feasibility study and we get into some more concrete, solicitation sessions together, then we would have to share names on a limited basis. But for this kind of presentation, just to give us an update, I suspect this is appropriate.
Thank you. Other questions?
I wonder if it would make sense for the committee to see just like an honor roll of donors or something like that, like the names of donors without the amounts.
I would say
we don't have to decide that right this minute,
right.
but it might be useful as we start calling on people or talking to people.
Well, I suspect, Diana, what we'll talk about as time goes on is, and definitely this is like communications and recognition is a big thing, absolutely. Yeah. And that my guess is that as a committee, you'll want to start with what your protocol is, which is, for the most part, donors will be recognized as a group without reference to the size of their gift for the time being. And that this group here, up until the launch of the lead gift phase, everybody would be considered early donors. So you could have special recognition for early giving to help get this going. And that might be their, an initial recognition phase. It's just folks not by amount, but alphabetical. And that we really are very appreciative of those who gave early. Something like that.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, Gary, I think this is gonna be very, very helpful. Thanks for being willing to do this and staying on top of it, working with Amanda. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Let's move on then to the next item, which is the task force on roofs and clean energy improvement. And we asked Joe Rupp to sort of be our liaison and a member of this committee. So Joe, if you'd share as much as you care to.
Sure. I don't think there's a ton to report at this moment. The committee did convene for the first time a couple weeks ago, and we have separated into two subcommittees. There's a subcommittee that deals with the roof itself that will be responsible for, kind of exploring the status of the roof, calling out contractors when necessary to give updated quotes, and just making sure that the plan to repair and rehab and replace the roof is comprehensive and deals with all the issues that we want it to address. A second committee is a committee that is exploring the possibility of installing solar panels on the roof, and looking at the different kind of approaches that we could take to do that, and aims to kind of come back to, first this committee, and then perhaps the board or the congregation generally, to kind of lay out our options, and then we would have to make a determination about which of those options, if any, we wanted to pursue. But the thought is that if we're going to be going through this whole roof rehab, something that the congregation has considered before is investing in clean energy and sourcing our energy from solar panels. And so it's a natural time to at least explore that in more detail and potentially wrap that into a more comprehensive package that we're marketing with the campaign itself. The first subcommittee meetings have happened, and then we haven't had the report back yet. That will happen at this point, I believe, in early April.
I wanted to just interject early on in the conversations with Anne Marie about my engagement. I mentioned that I worked with a congregation on a capital campaign in Massachusetts that actually did what you're doing. And so I am promising to, if you guys want to set up, this is the first church in Belmont, Massachusetts, and they had to fast track their solar work. They didn't have the roof work that you're going to have to do first, but they had to fast track their solar work because of a deadline in Massachusetts for energy credits. And so they did an early campaign to raise money specifically for the solar panels, which somewhat disrupted the whole campaign because so many people really like the solar work and everything else is less sexy than solar. So we had to do a lot of communications work to keep the balance, and that those folks who were giving to the solar panels also had to be giving to the general campaign at some point. But the guy who helped spearhead this was also the co-chair of the campaign, John Howe. And I know he would be glad to have a virtual session with you if you want to get some background on somebody who was right in the weeds in getting this organized in another church. if that's of interest to you. Yes? No?
Sure, yeah, we'd love to talk to him. I think I'm happy to talk to any congregation that has gone through the process. We have a couple churches that we're already in communication
Okay.
with that have gone through this process here in Virginia. The UU Church in Williamsburg went through a similar process a couple years ago, and Charles Jarena is reaching out and talking with them, and then I believe the United Church of Christ in Northern Chesterfield also went through a similar process, and we actually have some members that were previous members of that congregation too. So we're talking with
Okay,
them.
so
We're happy to talk to Mr. Howe as well.
so I will leave it to you. I mean, what he was good at was both the tying it back to the capital campaign as well as talking to donors. So his strength was on rallying a lot of support for it. So if you want to wait on that, we can circle back
Okay,
to it.
that's a good idea.
All
Yeah,
right.
good.
Yeah.
Kevin was in attendance along with Joe and me when Reverend Sherman kicked off this task force. And I got to tell you, there are 6 dynamite members of our congregation putting their minds together on this. On the solar side, now, Joe, don't you do this related work?
Sorry,
Joe?
keep going on mute to spare you the children's screams.
Oh.
I know you're being very good. I have historically worked in the environmental and clean energy field, so I'm pretty familiar with it.
And on his subcommittee,
we have a couple roof contractors on the roof subcommittee. We have a couple clean energy advocates on the solar subcommittee. So
Charles Jarena and Michael Tester joined Joe on that subcommittee, and they are big solar advocates, having done those things for their own residences. On the roof side, Tom Norton agreed to chair that group, and he is actually, I think, a facilities manager or a contract manager, construction. I don't know exact title for the Fed. Michael Gibson, who's an architect who is involved in the architectural plans for the renovation of the church. And then Reggie Henderson, who has a rich background of construction and roofing and contracting. And so, I mean, before the meeting ended, they were off and running about names and dates and serial numbers. I mean, it was very impressive. So I think there'll be a lot of good information for us to be able to present to the congregation when the time comes. So Kevin, wasn't that your sense as well?
Yeah, everybody, I mean, it started out a rich dialogue of ideas, and people had a lot of anecdotes for their own experiences going to solar, or having thought about how this benefits the church. There was a lot of conversation about the knowledge of the roof and how the roof is built and different technologies that we may employ moving forward. So I think we have a great group of people investigating that.
So that's all really, really good news. Okay, moving on so that we don't try to take your whole morning, what's left of it. We are going to turn the agenda over to Liz Coit, she has had to really sort of figure out what to start us focusing on our first meeting. So Liz, I think you have screen share capability if you want it.
Yes, I'm co-hosted, so I'm going to share screen, but before I do, or as I do, you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so since I'm sharing this, I may not be able to see you all if you have questions. So Anne Marie, I'm going to have to rely on you to see if anybody has questions.
Okay.
But, one thing that struck me about your mandate from when you were authorized as a committee in the past is that there wasn't a job description that came with it. And what happens over time, especially with this kind of work, is that there are expectations and anticipations that are not clear. And I think it's both for protection, guidance, ability to focus on what needs to be done if you actually have a job description. Now, you met last year and you were resilient in meeting last year. So if I'm doing anything redundant, or you already have sort of set this out in your mind, that would be great. What I've got here is I would really like the committee to name some things that should be in your job description. And then I have included key aspects of some of this work, because the more the board knows what you're doing and the congregation can really focus on what you're doing, the better your communications will be when we actually get into, you know, heavy duty campaign work. So, for instance, just the conversation about the roof and the solar, it sounds like other people are responsible, but obviously to make the case for the campaign, that information has to come back in some sort of form, make sure it goes to the brochure and all that stuff. So there's a communications liaisons. But this key aspects of the work may include keeping to a timeline, actually working on the stewardship effort, working on getting additional canvassers, subcommittees, and we'll come back to that. Is Margaret still on the call or is she gone off?
I think she's still here.
Okay, hi Margaret.
Yeah.
I'm just, and in terms of what her work is vis-a-vis this has to be clear also. Communications is big. Having real estate on the newsletter and in email blasts on a regular basis is starting now going to be important to keep the visibility up. You're working on a budget. I'm starting that work with Anne Marie also on a budget for a campaign that includes repairs and debt relief, but also costs of campaign work. And so we get a clear picture of what money we need to raise. And also one of the things that can break down campaigns and particularly UU congregations with congregational polity is who actually authorizes expenditures and at what point. But I'm sure that given the experience that Richmond has had in the past, this is probably a protocol that you guys have well in hand. But I just want to add it to this. Lots of oversight, but also getting your hands into the weeds about all this work. And then subcommittees, you may not need, you've already got basically the structural repairs and improvements in some form, but it seems to be focused on solar and roof. So I'd be interested to see if there are other kind of the structural repairs that have to be covered by other folks, or these two groups will cover all that's needed. There are communications work, there's writing work, whether there should be co-chairs separate from the steering committee because they are leaders with recognition and have a lot of stewardship and generosity experience and are interested in promoting this campaign, or will it be from this committee itself? So these are some of the things, and you received this in an email from Anne Marie earlier. So could some of you talk about what you're thinking in terms of the job description and what you really see as your work and what you don't see as your work? You're on mute, Anne Marie.
So first of all, this is very, very helpful. Thank you. Is it appropriate or not appropriate to add to the bullets under our work is that we ourselves each need to make a financial contribution?
Yes, of course. 100% participation of board, steering committee, and other leadership groups. Yes, absolutely. And the more that, you know, as a committee, if you've made your gift, you are stronger at asking for gifts. If this is the committee that's going to do that, and that's what I want to see. I would like clarity working with you, whether you all see yourselves as part of the fundraising group, or that we need more canvassers to participate in the fundraising.
So let's have people weigh in on the question that Liz just posed, and that is, do we see ourselves as canvassers? And if so, will we need to recruit additional canvassers? Am I stating that right, Liz? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. All right, so that's an absolutely key question. So let's have some response on that.
This is Dorothy. I'm willing to jump right in. The canvassing is not my strong suit. I am willing to stretch and do some, but I don't think that I can be counted on to do enough of that to carry my full weight. So I would be in favor of adding additional members who are good at it and enjoy it, which I know that's a tall order, but it's, yeah, I'll do what I need to do, but it's definitely not my strong suit.
I would, I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind canvassing, but it does strike me that, you know, I just think we need a lot more people devoted to that responsibility, especially if we end up launching this when we're not in person yet. It just seems to me like it's going to take a lot more individual retail conversations if we can't do in-person activities or launch events or stuff like that.
I would say that, you know, when we're going to look at the timeline too, looks like we're stretching out. We may be doing lead gift, trying to get the lead gifts by June, but much of it may start in the fall for the rest of the congregation. And for the lead gift work, I would imagine that's probably just a group of 4 or 5 who can each handle 4 or 5 people, so that you're covering at least your top 20 to 30 donors in June. And that would take about 4 to 5 folks. So nobody's taking a really heavy lead. I mean, 4 to 5 is a good number for folks to think about. And of course, I would really be there for orientation and kind of training. And I think it's easier than many folks think, because you're really getting folks jazzed up about the changes that are coming for the congregation and the church. You know, we can, anytime you speak from your heart, you can ask for a gift, but that's for later. But all to say, for the next 6 months, we're looking for 4 to 5 strong canvassers from likely the board and this committee, and maybe 1 or 2 others. So that would be the need at this point.
I'll chime in here. I'm sorry, my computer blacked out for a minute, so I think I'm okay now. But my expertise is not really in asking for donations, but in writing the materials. And so I'm more inclined to want to get involved in producing really thorough and helpful materials for the fundraising. I don't know if Liz saw it, but way back when we first started talking about this, I had drafted a case statement based on the case statement that I co-wrote for the previous campaign. And if Liz, if you haven't seen it, we can send you a copy, but it was really just a draft, and it's not at all ready for prime time, but it was just sort of to help outline what we need to know, what information we need so we can move forward.
And we did get that to Liz. Yes, thanks, Dean.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that Margaret speaking? Because I don't have everybody on my screen.
I know it was me, Deanna.
Hi, Deanna. Deanna, great piece. I do want to work with, I will be glad to work with somebody who can craft written materials. And I'm excited by what you've done so far. But let's, we can talk separately
Sure.
and to start getting it, because we are going to need a document that is probably a PowerPoint shaped case statement for the financial feasibility study. So we'll talk off the line, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
I think this is helpful to have everybody weigh in, as did Dorothy and Joe, Deanna as well, about sort of how they feel right now about being a canvasser. So be honest, but also know that we're open to you changing one way or the other, how enthusiastic you are about canvassing. But I just briefly, if we can hear from other people, the answer to the same question would be helpful.
I would, I would say, as an introvert, the idea of canvassing is not something that is openly appealing at its onset. I mean, I think I could. I mean, I feel like I could do some in a limited capacity. I do, you know. I think my biggest thing I'm thinking about is just the time and availability of being able to do it, and it leaves me to evenings and weekends of being able to do it, and that may be the natural time that you would do it. I'm not sure. For me, I think it's more of wondering about the time commitment.
Yeah, along those lines, if we've got whatever it is, 500 or so people to contact, and it's only 10 or so of us, that's 50 each, and that's a little out of our range, I think, in addition to doing everything we have to do. Probably many of us might feel comfortable with doing a few people, a handful, but it would have to be limited, I would think, because maybe we're not amenable to it, number one, and number two, there's just too many people to reach. And I saw it somewhere in Liz's things that she anticipates contacting each family individually. So that's a big project.
Gary, I want to respond to that. I worked with I think the best way to say this is that, and we're not sure we're going to be doing any of this outside of pandemic, but we hope we are, because this will be going into the fall. That's one thing. Two, I would guess in realistic terms, and this is where I hesitate to say this because this is being recorded, but I think in all honesty, as we go forward, we'll be doing very well to get to 3/4 of folks. And that what we need, any individual canvasser who's doing this work probably could handle a maximum of 7 to 10. And as we could aspire to that. And then there are other kind of more group and collective ways that we would handle other folks. So I think this is something that we work through as we see what the load is. We still want to get to as a largest percentage of participation, even if gifts are small, for the campaign. But I think actually this can work out. And to bring this down to a manageable level, we should think about 7 to 10 per person and build up from there. And it does mean having a lot of canvassers, but I think this is hard when you've got people in the church and people you don't know in the church, and how they see you and what kind of way you want to be perceived. But each of you is a leader, and each of you visiting somebody is actually an honor for that person. And we can turn around some of this. There's a lot of work we can do to raise the visibility of this work and make it kind of easier to have a conversation about stories as you are just giving people the opportunity to contribute to this campaign.
So Liz, this is why we want you on board. Let's hear from Tom and his answer to this. I think you're the only one, because Margaret, as a member of the staff, I'm not going to call on you for this question right now. So Tom, can you share?
Well, I guess my expectation, since I agreed to be on the steering committee, was that would involve at some point personally being a canvasser. So I've been expecting that to happen. I don't know that I don't view myself as being especially skilled or at that role, though I'm certainly expecting to do it and willing to do it. I guess my experience has been, I've been in a couple times in the past canvassers for annual campaigns, and that was done on a more active basis than it has been in the last few years. And I guess my reflecting back on that, I think my experience has been that I did reasonably well And I would hope I would do that for this job also. And I guess I define reasonably well as trying to provide the information about what the church is doing and be enthusiastic enough that folks want to give what for them is the right amount, and that's going to differ. And I guess I also recall the experiences where talking to folks, I was surprised to find out about reverses in their personal financial situations, illnesses, or failing businesses or whatever that I didn't know about. So there were times when I was expecting to get a fairly large gift from someone and did not. I got a much smaller one because of the personal financial reversals that they had that I hadn't known about before. And so I assume we're going to experience some of that with the capital campaign also.
So thank you. It appears that most people are not excited about canvassing. I'm going to reiterate what Liz said. I can promise everybody on this committee that by the time we build up to what we are raising money for, the future of our congregation, and we have worked closely together and been trained by Liz, I don't think any of you are going to feel reluctant to go ask a few people, have that session with a few people and do a beautiful job at it. So I appreciate you being honest about your reluctance or you're feeling that it's out of your comfort zone. But I promise you, by the time we get to that point, you're going to be on board. I just really believe that. And I'm an extrovert and I'm not going to be afraid of asking for money, but it's because I have really come to see the importance of what we're doing for the future of the congregation. So have hope, people. It's not going to be as bad as you think. So Liz, what's next on what you want to get from us today? I do want to on your next thing here. We actually did form subcommittees earlier on. And maybe we want to revisit that at our next meeting or in between the meetings. So we have gotten some of that work underway.
Okay, I think I'm conscious of time too. So I want, because of the, I'm going to switch out of this. I'm going to stop sharing, but I need to share the next document. And I will now share screen because this is important for us in the very near future. And so I want, you've received this. This is somewhat of an updated timeline, but you'll get a copy of this. So the timeline is still an estimate of what's going on. And we're meeting today, and what we're looking at is, what's coming up in March. And the March has to start the process of the financial feasibility study, better known as the campaign feasibility study, because, and this is where we start to get in how we're going to meet people. And the precursor for this is really to have materials on hand and to have the most up-to-date information we can about the purpose of the campaign. As a side issue for Gary and Anne Marie, from now on, I do need to have the financial information with names so that I can work with folks in making decisions about who gets what conversations we have during the financial feasibility study. So I'll talk to you offline about that. And rest assured, this information is always confidential and it is destroyed both electronically and then if there's any physical copies, there is no record of any of this information after the campaign. So basically, I will probably want to work with Deanna right away on materials for a financial feasibility study. And also whomever Anne Marie is starting to think about what you're going to put in newsletters and claim some real estate space in regular communications with congregations, whether it's the order of service, email blasts, or newsletters. We're going to start having to do this soon.
So could we start, a good point, what I would like, Margaret, if I can ask this of you, and that is, would you send Kevin and me your recommendations about where we would have our regular communiques to the congregation? Because I know it's like almost every day we get something and it'll fit in some particular place. So if you could.
I can tell you right now, but I can email it to you as well, which is better.
email it, that way it'll put it on our radar. So yeah, that would be great to know. Thank you. Liz, go back to you.
Okay, there we go. So I also I'm going to start setting up meetings and getting a little more in-depth information from Reverends Puppy, Logan, and possibly Cinnamon. Is she active with the congregation? I couldn't really tell.
Yes, she is.
Yes, I would say yes.
Okay. And Denise, Tom, and I probably will be calling on you guys for just quick conversations. So these will be less than 30 minutes, but I just want to touch base with a bunch of folks. Okay. And then coming right up, I will work with Anne Marie on developing the plan for the financial feasibility study. And when is the next meeting of the steering committee?
We have not, we've not arranged dates, and that's something we need.
I'm hoping that it's less than a month, but if it's once a month, then we need a lot of interim communications together.
Let's talk about that issue at the end of the meeting, people, okay?
Okay. So the financial feasibility study is the next piece. I've got to say campaign feasibility study. And it's not, obviously you've received gifts, and also you worked with me and we looked at kind of an estimate of our capacity goal, how much we can financially raise, and getting to those estimates. And that's what this is about. Alongside of the work that the other committees are doing, I'm trying to get a pinpoint position on what is the true expenditure that you're looking at. So I hope that you will be working on that, because by the time we start the financial feasibility study, and if you look at this, I'm saying that we're gonna start inviting people as early as March 11th, a couple of weeks away, and that then the conversations start to happen March 21st. This is an estimate, but as close as you can get to ballpark estimate of the financial need based on this work that you're doing on solar paneling and the roof costs. I mean, we have some estimates and the debt. We know basics of what this goal is, but fine tuning it a little bit more so that it becomes part of the conversations we have with people during the campaign feasibility study. Is that, did I make that, am I understanding the situation, and does this make sense to you all?
Wow, that's, I think, a little too complicated of a question to put out there right now. I think if I can speak for the committee, I'd say we've got the best figures that we've got right now, with the exception of this thing called staff transition, which is at 155. We really don't know what that is or what it's supposed to cover or whether it's meaningful. And so I'd love to follow up with this with you, but I don't think we'll be prepared to do any fine tuning of the $2 million estimate in the next couple weeks. Anybody disagree with that assessment?
The only thing I can think that may change that is the task force that's looking at the roof repair as they get quotes. I mean, if we start to see quotes that are, so far outside of what our estimate is, that would be the only thing I can think of.
Tom?
I guess my quandary here is to what extent we should, and I think in this last conversation, I've heard references to both issues. On the one hand, we're trying to grapple anew with the subcommittee on solar panels and the roof replacement, whatever, with new updated estimates of what the church might be able to use some capital funds for. On the other hand, we've been given long ago, we were given the amounts that were in the resolution that were approved by the board and the congregation, and the authorization to go forward with the capital campaign. And I'm hearing reference to those items also. Those things don't necessarily match. And certainly it's much more attractive to be dealing with what is new and exciting. On the other hand, from sort of a lawyer's perspective, legalistically, we've got what we are authorized and directed to do. And so I guess I'm having sort of, in my mind, I'm having trouble sort of matching those two concepts and dealing with them.
I would speak to that this way. The authorization is on the books. So yes, that's what we all have to aspire to. That's that goal. My question will be something that isn't answered now, Tom, which is if the financial feasibility study indicates that say it's only, my estimates come in at 65% of what was authorized. Okay. The question will be whether you really can afford to pay off the loan or not, or whether you keep the loan. But that's for a later date. I think in most cases, these things become kind of a slow marriage between what the financial capacity indicates and what, in your case, has been authorized. But authorized is different than actual summation of what costs are. So there's sort of three numbers going on. But if you're authorized and you all want to work from the authorization, that's the number we can use. However, as your consultant, I would be advising different words for the presentation for the case statement. I would not use, obviously, staff transition. Most of what you're trying to do is for a future vision of First Unitarian. And we would really look at how we can couch these various things into not how they've been labeled for practical financial purposes, but what they intend to accomplish. And so that's why working with Deanna on language is we got to change the language so it really has a much more compelling sense to it. I will talk with Anne Marie offline about some of the things we need to do to fill in the blanks so that we can get this campaign out in the public eye at First Unitarian completely in a different way. I know that gifts have come in, but I would guess, and some of you who know numbers, I would guess we really need whoever has already given a gift to probably think about giving more. But that we're going to leave that aside for the moment.
I was also thinking that it would be might be smart for Kevin and me to record videos to be broadcast through one of our communication devices that saying that we have engaged that remind people that we're doing our work and that we've engaged a consultant. Because I remember the last campaign, there was a big to-do about introducing the consultant and what that person would do for us. And so I would love to promote your work in some way, also because you'll be contacting some people, we will be. And so for them to know you and know that what you're up to. So do you think that makes sense for Kevin and me to work together to do a little video to go out?
Yes, I guess that you will all know how people get their information from and about First Unitarian Richmond. And videos is probably a piece of that. Where else do folks look? Does something also have to be written? I don't know. I suspect we should try to cover all communications channels that people are likely to use.
Let me pause here for a minute. Are people willing to go 15 more minutes this morning or this afternoon till 12:15? And if so, Liz, I've got about maybe 2 minutes of business, and that is scheduling regular meetings. Do you have something you can make sure you get from us before 12:13 today?
Well, I want everybody to agree on a job description. So what I can do is take the notes, but if you want to send anything to me, you have my email about how you see the job description. Because you folks need to work with it, and also you need to communicate it with the board so everybody has a sense and can manage expectations of you. And what you intend to cover, what you're committing to. Because it wasn't in the authorization that you received to form the committee. And as we go forth, we need to give you boundaries, and we need to give direction to the work that the steering committee is going to do. So please, in the next few days, maybe by Tuesday, send me your ideas about the job description. And let's see if we can put something together that you actually will vote on at your next meeting. And
Liz,
then,
if you would be able to take the one that you've written, which is extremely helpful, add the notes that we made and shoot that out to people. That way they'd be able to respond to you directly with this particular item. That'd be great.
will do. Okay.
Liz, can I ask a quick question? Do you have any examples that you could maybe include of how other capital campaigns have defined the job description that you could share?
I can share some things. I would say as a, every congregation is different. Some people create a campaign task force, which from the get-go is about raising money. But it strikes me that the steering committee is trying to look at various aspects of the work to be done, as well as, what has to happen to make a campaign work. I have some of that. I've sent Anne Marie a rather heavy-duty campaign manager job, which is actually a volunteer position and might be her job description. She needs to work on that too, to see if she feels that as kind of the coordinator of the steering committee, what makes sense for her. I will say, and for you folks to think about this, during the campaign period, from the launch of, say, the communications about the campaign feasibility study through to the completion of the campaign, which is next fall, and we will leave summer aside. Let's just say summer's off. You might expect to spend anywhere from 7 to, in some cases, 15 hours a month on this. But that's during the heavy period of time of that includes that period where you're actually doing canvassing. So, do you have 7 hours, 5 hours, or set your own limits and see how you can work this? But yes, I will respond to that request.
Okay, thank you.
And the second thing is the follow-up on this is to definitely work on the communications with whomever is appropriate, Anne Marie, through you, Margaret, on the technical parts, Deanna in the crafting part. That's next. And then I will be sending you materials about what a financial feasibility study entails. Our next meeting should be about that, at least in addition to the other agenda items. That's it.
Kevin, it strikes me that we should give Liz access to the Google Drive that has all of our documents, because in there are the assignments that people have agreed to do, the subcommittee work, and that should be helpful for her to see what we've committed to so far. Okay. So would you be able to add her to that drive?
Yes.
Invite her into? Good, thank you. I was writing, next meeting we have to do what again?
We'll go over what the campaign feasibility study is going to be in a little more depth. And okay. Presuming that it happens, right, so is a date set? You will set a date?
We'll do that next. Let me ask people, Liz just mentioned something called a campaign manager position, and that's a new concept to me. It certainly makes sense as I look it over, but it's a new concept. I guess I really want to hear from you all the extent to which you're comfortable with me, because I have the time and the commitment and the passion for this work, sort of doing a lot of work in between meetings with Liz directly on your behalf. I guess I'm a little, reluctant to sort of go rogue on you, because it is our committee. But, are you comfortable with me working directly with Liz in between meetings, and to what extent? I guess the question would be, to what extent? And how do I have accountability to you if I do that?
Yes, I think that would be
I
good.
say go for it.
If you would, keep us informed of what the major things are, of course, but somebody's got to do the heavy lifting, and I can't think of a better person.
I think given my work life commitments right now, I think it seems natural.
I think we're fortunate to have somebody who's interested in doing it and wants to jump into it. So I would give my favorable vote.
Does anybody have a problem with it? Like you don't
No,
trust
I
me
agree.
or?
No,
No, I agree. I trust you. I think you do a good job at it, and you have the, like you said, you have the time and passion for it. So I'm good with that.
Okay, well, that's helpful. And call me call me on it if you're finding that you're not being kept in the loop. That would not be my desire at all. I think, I can send out email communiques to kind of let you know what we're up to, and always feel free to have different opinions or whatever. Now, Tom, I'm going to have to really encourage you to step up and have a different opinion every once in a while. If it's
I've been known to do that.
don't be shy now.
Okay.
Okay, so Liz, that gives us some leeway in terms of just getting down to work on a lot of these things. So then let's finish up by talking about meetings, because this, if nothing else, everybody needs to commit to have these kinds of meetings periodically. So Liz sort of showed two models. One is like we meet every 2 weeks for this kind of meeting, hour and 15 minutes. The other model would be once a month with more focused meetings of subgroups and that kind of thing in between. So any thoughts generally in response to those two options?
I just feel like it's going to be helpful. The more meetings we can get on our calendars, the better, so that we hold those dates. And then if things change, we can change it. But at least we're starting out with some dates that are reserved.
Yeah, I tend to favor more frequency. It just seems like there are going to be a lot of moving pieces, at least in the initial phases of this. And so the more we can be in touch on a frequent basis, the better.
Well, what about if we do every 2 weeks at 11? Tell me the pros and cons of that. Gary's good with that.
I think that's fine.
Kevin's good with that.
It work for me.
Okay. Okay, so we'd have our first one 2 weeks from today. And so what I'll do is send out a schedule. Now, Margaret is the one kind of wild card on this. I know she has leadership meetings on Saturday mornings, and aren't those 10 to 12 or something?
I don't know.
Nobody else goes to leadership meetings?
I have a quilters meeting on the second Saturday of every month from 9:30 to 10:30 or 11. But with the exception of March 13th, when we're trying to celebrate Billy's birthday, 100th birthday, I could, the quilting meetings are not necessities.
All right, well, let's assume that some people are going to, you're going to miss every few meetings and people have
Yeah.
conflicts. But in general, and Liz, does that work for you? Saturday 11 every 2 weeks? I guess consultants have to work weekends if that's when your people are available. So, this is fantastic. I really appreciate people being willing to do this. And I think Joe is right, just sort of checking in every 2 weeks, focused on particular things that need to be done will be a better way to gear up and feel like we're off and humming than sort of sporadic. So that's great. Does that work for you, Liz? We good? All right. Well, any other business we need to cover? Anything we've missed? Anything that, Liz, you want us to that you can't communicate directly with us about?
I would just say I've talked to Anne Marie a bit about what happens around the annual pledge drive at First Unitarian, and the sort of some sync up, some not sync up, but because of the future role and the idea that you will either be recruiting canvassers and you may actually do some of the offering opportunities to people to contribute to the capital campaign. You notice how I said that? You pay attention to what canvassers are doing, or I understand it's a little different at First Unitarian, but if you see folks who easily ask for money, keep your eye on them.
My understanding, I don't know if you all know this, but there is going to be a pledge drive in March and April. It's going to be pretty short. It's going to be focused. And my guess is, and I haven't heard this officially, Margaret's off now, but my guess is going to be very much like last year. And that is there's an email that's going to go out and say, are you willing to pledge again this year like you did last year? And then staff will follow up, or maybe board will follow up. There may not even be canvassers. I don't know the plan. I think the good news is that by the time we gear up, the annual fund drive will pretty much be, behind us.
Except for the financial feasibility study is pretty crucial. So let's, you and I talk online to make sure that won't,
Okay.
let's just see if we can sync that up.
Okay. That's good. All right. Well, thank you, people. Really, really good meeting. And Liz, I think I speak for all of us that it is so reassuring to have you on board. I mean, it's just really, really a blessing. So we're really glad we found you and that you're willing to work with us, and look forward to do that going forward. Deanna,
you've all showed such great resilience over the past year, and we'll continue. We'll continue.
Deanna, do you want to close this up with the chalice?
Sure. Everyone has a spirit that can be refined, a body that can be trained in some manner, a suitable path to follow. You are here for no other purpose than to realize your inner divinity and manifest your innate enlightenment. Foster peace in your own life and apply the art of peace to all that you encounter.
Maybe so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, any final words? You good? Great to see everybody.
See y'all later.
So long.
Yeah, nice to see.
Dorothy, stay on for a second.
Okay.
Well, you're going to be envious, but after 3 months not being able to go up to the cottage, we're heading off after lunch.
Woohoo! I am envious. I think about that beautiful cottage so often. If you ever decide to sell it and family members aren't.
You are first on my list, trust me, as I know my sons aren't going to be bidding on it. So anyway, yeah, it's, you might remember there's water damage on the walls. And so once they got in to look at it, it turns out that probably the skylight that was over the far east side had a leak. And so dripping down the roof, and so then when they got into that became a horrendous job. I finally just told them to close that skylight off. It's not like we're lacking for light in the cottage, so it wasn't really necessary.
It's a shame though, because I love skylights, and we're thinking about putting a deck on the back porch, and to replace the deck, put a screen porch or an all-season room. Yeah. I just hate to lose the light that I get into the dining room, because it would be right there. So I was thinking, okay, well, I'll put skylights, but there's so many stories of skylights going bad, and the roof gets ruined, the walls get ruined from water damage. So I don't know. Maybe we're just
a tough one. Yeah,
it is a tough one.
He finally got everything scrubbed down and repaired, and so it's just signed off on it yesterday. So I said to John, we are going. I don't care if it's a short trip. The damage from the ice storm up there. I mean, the cottage itself didn't get damaged, but he sent pictures. The guy that was doing this work for me sent pictures, and I mean, limbs just blanket the deck and the yard and everything. So we're mostly going up there for a work trip, but.
Yeah, I'm still into that.
Well, once we're back and running and everything's smooth, we can talk.
How's the road? has it washed out anymore or anything, or is
No,
it?
it's pretty much stable. Yeah, it's pretty much, I think. I mean, we'll see when we go up there, but I think things kind of stabilized on that front. So,
That's good.
let's just plan that you guys will be able to get up there sometime this spring or, early
Well,
summer.
that'd be lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
So anyway, yeah, wasn't that just amazing news about Abby? Charles especially must have been thrilled because,
Oh, he was. When
yeah.
he saw the email, he came running down. His office is upstairs. I make my office here in the dining room, and he came running down the stairs. He said, "Have you seen the email?" I'm like, "No, what email?" Because I don't check my personal email during the day very often. He said,
Forever.
"Read it." Yeah, I mean, just absolutely amazing news. I mean, I couldn't stop the tears. So happy for her.
Well, I was honored because she called me to tell me Thursday
Oh,
afternoon.
wow.
And I've just gotten so close to her children, and
Exactly. Yeah.
and so I think she knows what a change it'll be. Ironically, I had just put all the pieces in place for the school drivers
Uh-huh.
because school's back in session for Valentina, and by March 8th it will be in session for Carmen as well. And so we had to put drivers in place. So and I was out buying car seats off of Amazon Marketplace. I mean, everything was like ready to go.
Yeah.
So am I disappointed? Well, not really. But anyway, so I tell you, I think I am going to have a little withdrawal. I just,
Yeah.
it's so easy to incorporate them in my lives. And I
Mhm.
got to tell you, I mean, I don't know how well you know Valentina, but she is one special, special little girl.
I've only met her a few times before, we went out, we haven't been back in the building. So I didn't get a chance to have much interaction with her.
Very special little girl. And just seeing her English come through, and it's been a real blessing for me. People say, "Oh, you're so good." I said, "No, this has really been all a treat for me. I'm training to be a grandmother." And so, Hey, Dorothy, I
This is
love
gonna
your hair. You got it colored and curled.
Well, this is actually natural. I did not dry it this morning after I took my shower, and if I don't dry it or straighten it, this is what it looks like. So
And that's what people are paying a lot of money to do to their hair.
It's funny because Lucy is all about, well, I wish I had wavy hair. I'm like, and here I spend all this time straightening mine with a flat iron every, couple
No,
days. And
I think that looks really awesome.
oh, thank you.
And then you got like a red and blonde highlights.
Well, the reddish is more my natural color, but the blonde highlights, I usually get those. You just don't notice them as much when it's straightened. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am endorsing. Did you see, I got my hair literally straightened.
Yes.
It's not, I got a little bit of that, but not as many curls as you do. So I don't know, something about the coronavirus is like, what can I do that's different and fun here?
I've been so tempted to go ahead and do, I wanted like a pink streak or pink hair for the longest time. And I'm like, I'm not in the office. Why not? Just commit to it, but I still haven't had the guts. Yours looks fantastic.
Thank you. I'd say I'm not sure it's a long-term hairdo because it costs an arm and a leg, but it's just fun for a change. So
Yeah, it's nice to do something different.
well, how are you feeling about the committee and its work?
I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm glad we've got Liz on board so that we can actually start making some forward motion now.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. And you saw that I asked Gary to be this sort of liaison with
Oh
the,
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
with mine because we need you more for like all kinds of other things, understanding the numbers better and everything. But it's a good job for Gary, and he was happy to do it. So
Yeah, and I'm already on the finance committee. I already overlooked the numbers there, so it was perfectly fine to have Gary do this, and he did a great job. So yeah, that's cool. He was on the finance committee years ago when I was on it, so I have faith in him.
he might have been treasurer along the way.
He was a treasurer a long time back, maybe 2 or 3 treasurers before me. I think Joe and then Harvey before him. And I think Gary was maybe before Harvey, like when we first started at the church.
Yeah,
So.
we're a small, but what should we say? Once a treasure, always a treasure in this church.
Yes, absolutely. Your name gets around. Oh, you
People
know
don't.
something about the finances. Let's get you on this
Yeah,
committee.
weren't you the money person? So, well, listen, I heard what you said about, your reluctance to step out and ask money, but honestly, Dorothy, you have such credibility in the congregation. If you get to, if you get to select the people that you talk to, I think you will have a beautiful and heartfelt discussion. And the thing that, have you done canvassing for stewardship?
I only did it one time and it was with Sharon. She and I did it jointly to get my feet wet. And I didn't know the person at the time. I had seen her around, obviously, but I didn't know her on a one-on-one basis. And it was really difficult because she brought up some very difficult topics, like, the only time I really directly hear from anybody in church is at stewardship time. And, last time you asked me for a 20% increase, and I don't know that I can give you, because we were asking for another increase that next year. And she's like, I don't know that I can do that. And so it was hard to me to feel like we were pressing someone who was on a fixed income and already, felt like she was doing the best she could. So that's kind of my one experience at doing this. Oh, plus, when at the last capital campaign, we were new to the church. We were fairly new when that kicked off. And but then at a sip and sup, someone who had been approached for a substantial donation was talking about how hilarious she thought that was, that they thought she could afford a substantial donation. So I don't know how we judge, how we determine who to ask for how much is, kind of sticky. So
Well, I just feel like a world of difference having Liz on board. She'll be able to train us in how to have those conversations and how to deal
yes,
with those issues and questions. And
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm definitely willing to give it a shot. I'm one of those people who's on that in that median area between introvert and extrovert. I have
yeah,
tendencies of both.
right, right.
um, and overcoming those introvert tendencies, I've worked on that all my life. I have to do it for my job. I'm always talking to, the CFO and people like that. And so I've had to get past it, but it's still hard. It's still a
Sure.
little push.
Yeah, and I hope our new members of the committee are people who don't mind. But let's just face it. You heard very, very few people like to ask for money. It's just
I
not.
know it's a hard thing to do. Yeah.
All right, well, I'll let you go, but nice to see you one-on-one, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just great to see you, Dorothy.
Have a wonderful weekend doing cleanup
you.
work.
I'm also throwing a virtual baby shower for my daughter-in-law tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, that'll be so fun.
Yeah, she's in California, and there were going to be people from Norway to California and everywhere in between on the shower. So
You gotta
anyway,
admit, that is one of the benefits of being able to do it virtually,
I wouldn't have been able to. I probably wouldn't have gone out there just for baby showers. So this
Yeah,
is
I mean, who knew that this stuff could work? We did a virtual one for my boss too, when his wife was pregnant, when we first went out. So
good.
yeah,
Good.
it's interesting.
All right, well, take
Yeah.
care.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.